When I say the name Abraham Maslow, what comes to mind? Probably a pyramid, right? The hierarchy of needs food, safety, love, all that. But what if I told you his most revolutionary idea, the one that could truly change how we see ourselves, has almost nothing to do with that famous pyramid?
Let's kick things off with a pretty big question, one that was at the very heart of Maslow's work. What if our entire map of the human mind, what if it was drawn by only studying the broken parts? Imagine trying to understand the wonder of flight by only ever studying plane crashes. That's the problem Maslow wanted to solve.
And that question, well, it gets to the core of what he saw as a huge blind spot in the psychology of his day. He basically argued that by focusing almost exclusively on sickness and what goes wrong, the field was playing with, only half a deck of cards. So on the one hand, you've got the old school psychology, which was super influenced by Freud. It was all about the sick, the neurotic, the pathological. It basically gave us a very detailed picture of our darker half. Maslow's vision, though, it completely flipped the script. He started asking a totally different and much more hopeful question. What's right with us? What does it look like when a human being is absolutely flourishing? I mean, think about it like this. If you really want to learn how to navigate the massive ocean of human experience, you can't just study the ships that sink, right? Maslow said we have to study the master navigators, the people who sail with purpose and incredible skill. You have to understand success if you ever want to grasp our true potential. And he laid out this entire blueprint in his incredible book, Toward a Psychology of Being. He called his new approach a health psychology, a science that wasn't just about fixing what's broken, but about building what's right.
Okay, so what is this new psychology actually built on? Well, its whole foundation rests on a set of pretty radical ideas about our basic human nature.
So here's the core idea. Maslow believed that every single one of us is born with an essential inner self, kind of like a biological blueprint for who we could become. And this is the key part. He argued that this inner nature isn't bad or sinful. It's actually good, or at worst, neutral. It's driven to grow, just like an acorn is driven to become a giant oak tree. Things like cruelty, hatred, he said those aren't our factory settings. They're more like error messages. They're reactions that happen when our deepest needs get frustrated. Sickness, then, isn't some outside force. It's what happens when we ignore or suppress who we truly are. And this simple statement, this was a huge challenge to the way people thought back then. For decades, psychology had been laser-focused on all the darkness. Maslow came along and basically turned on the lights, suggesting that we have consistently and kind of tragically underestimated our own capacity for goodness.
Okay, but that raises a pretty obvious question, right? If our inner nature is so good, why isn't everyone a saint? Why isn't the world just a paradise of happy, fulfilled people? Well, Maslow had an answer for that too.
His answer is that this inner voice, it's not some powerful, roaring instinct like a lion's urge to hunt. It doesn't scream at us. It's not this commanding shout that forces us to be our best selves. It's more like a whisper. It's delicate, it's subtle. And that whisper, man, it gets drowned out so easily by all the noise of daily life, by our own bad habits, by the massive pressure we feel to just conform, and of course, by our fear of being different. But here's the hopeful part, the really amazing part. Even though it's quiet, this inner drive is incredibly resilient. Even when we ignore it or bury it under all these layers of what we're supposed to do, it almost never goes away completely. It just keeps pushing, quietly, but always urging us to become who we're meant to be. So once you get this idea of a weak but persistent inner voice, it completely changes how you think about mental health and sickness. It forces you to ask some really uncomfortable but important questions about what it even means to be well-adjusted. And Maslow asks this incredibly provocative question. Think about it. Is being well-adjusted to a sick or unjust culture, is that really a sign of health? He uses the really stark example of the Nazis at Auschwitz and asks, who was healthier? The guards who felt totally fine, who were happy and well-adjusted to their monstrous jobs? Or the ones who were tormented by guilt and anxiety? This just flips the conventional definition of health completely on its head. Maslow's saying that true sickness isn't always about feeling pain. Sometimes the real sickness is the absence of pain in a situation that should be causing it. In a messed up situation, feeling bad might just be the healthiest possible response. To explain this, he came up with the idea of the intrinsic conscience. Now, this is totally different from the Freudian superego, which is basically just the voice of your parents or society rattling around in your head. No, the intrinsic conscience is the voice of your own potential. It's that nagging guilt a natural-born artist feels when they spend their whole life as an accountant just to make their family happy. It's the pain of betraying your own self. So what this all means is that those uncomfortable feelings we're always rushing to get rid of, that anxiety, that guilt, that frustration, they might not always be the enemy. They could actually be growing pains. They could be the sound of your true self fighting to get out from underneath all the weight of conformity and fear.
And this all builds up to what Maslow saw as the real goal of life. If sickness is betraying yourself, then health has to be something way more profound than just not being sick.
The end game isn't just to be problem-free or to get back to zero. The true goal of a human life, the highest possible expression of health, is to become the person you were always meant to be. It's about actively, courageously realizing your own unique potential. That, right there, is self-actualization. So Maslow basically gives us a new map for living. And this path isn't about avoiding difficulty, it's about running towards it. It starts with the hard work of discovering who you really are underneath all the noise. Then you have to practice listening to that quiet inner voice, that intrinsic conscience, over the roar of what everyone else expects. Third, and this one is so important, you have to be willing to embrace the struggles that are necessary for growth. And finally, you have to answer your own life's calling, whatever that is, instead of just accepting a script someone else wrote for you. Which leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about in our own lives. A question that gets to the very core of everything Maslow was talking about. In those quiet moments, when you really listen, whose voice is guiding your choices? Is it that weak, subtle whisper of your own inner nature? Or is it the loud, demanding shout of someone else's expectations?